Hello and welcome to Class Time, your daily classroom for CSEC students. Watch this lesson in real time on Television Jamaica's YouTube channel or One Spot Media. In today's English lesson, we will be focusing on letter of request. I am Nicola Bailey Blackstock. All right, so if we notice the pattern, we have been looking at a series of business letters. Now today it's no different, right? We're still looking at the business letter, but today specifically we will be looking at the letter of request. Now again, you might be wondering, why is it that you need to learn to write the letter of request? We may not know what you will get in the paper 1, section B. So again, we have to prepare you for everything, right? So the letter of request. What is the letter of request? But you know my routine. Before we get into that, we always look at the lesson objectives, what you will learn at the end of the lesson. All right. So the lesson objectives are: state what is a letter of request, identify situations that require writing a letter of request, list the parts of the letter of request, and develop competency in writing by writing a letter of request. All right? So all of these things we should learn at the end of the lesson. Now, what is a letter of request? All right, so here it says a letter of request is written on any occasion when someone wants to politely ask for information, a favor, or permission for a particular matter. It is an official document that shows the intention of requesting something like a document, details, permission, or assistance. It is written by an individual or entity. All right, so again, we're looking at the letter of request, and we need to bear in mind that it is a formal document, right? It is an official document that is written by an individual or by an organization, right? Or an entity, as it says here. Now, why would you need to write a letter of request? Now, you can write a letter of request for any reason, right? You want permission from your boss to attend a function. You want payment for a job that you did. You want stationery for your department, right? You can write a letter of request. So there are many reasons for a person to write a letter of request, right? Now, but one thing that we need to consider is when we're writing a letter of request, as with the other types of business letter, yes, it is formal, but we should also remember that the tone should be formal. And for the letter of request, we are requesting something politely, right? We are requesting something politely. So when you're writing a letter of request, do not be demanding, right, in your tone. Remember that you should be polite. All right, continuing with what is a letter of request. Such a letter is addressed to a person or the relevant authority in an institution, company, or entity. A letter of request is important to politely express the legitimate demands that one would like to be met by the reader. This letter enables one to air their views, grievances, or requests in writing. A letter of request can be used as a document for a reference in the future. One can also use this letter to request for an adjustment or changes to a correct situation, or to correct a situation, A letter of request is an official document and should be written in a formal way. Now, remember with the what letter did we do the last lesson, where we looked at the fact that you write letters for evidence, right? So to have things on file so that persons can go back to them and you can have it for yourself to say, then, okay, then I wrote this letter at this time so that the person can know that it was written and it was sent, right? Just like a letter of complaint. When you write a letter of complaint, it is on file. You have it there to know that it was actually written and sent out. Now, when you write a letter of request, it does the same thing, right? You have it on file that you wrote this letter, say to order 10 pens, 20 pencils, 50 erasers, right? So you would have it as future reference to know that, okay, then this is exactly what I requested. This is exactly what I asked for, right? So that the person who is looking at it can say, okay, then yes, this is exactly what was requested, all right? Now, again, the letter of request is a formal document and it must be written in a formal way. Please, I'm asking that we always remember that, right? Business letters are formal documents and they must be written in a formal way. All right, format of the letter of request, right? Now, use the proper format. Writing your letter in the proper professional format of a business letter is a good way to make a positive first impression. In the top left corner, you should include first, your full address, second, the date, and third, the full address of the sender. There should be a line of space between each of these. All right, now, before we even go any further, again, we look at the conventions of writing a business letter. Now, we have been looking at the fact that there are several ways or several formats that you can use to write a business letter. And the letter of request is no different. Now, remember when we looked at the block format and the semi-block format? Right. Now, you can choose to write using the block or the semi-block format, but for most business letters, we use the block format. All right? Now, we're looking at the different, the layout, of the letter of request, right? And it is no different, as I said before, from the letter of complaint that we did the last class, where we had two addresses, right? The sender's address and the receiver's address. Now, the letter of request is the same thing. All right. Now, using the proper format, you can't go wrong, right? And remember that if you are the sender, you are the person who is sending the address, sending the letter or writing the letter of request, you use your address. Or if you're writing on behalf of an entity, it is the entity's address that you would use, right? So that would be the sender's address. Now, to the person to whom you are sending the letter to, you need to include the address, the name of the person, the address, right? And also their job description. All right. You may also include a subject line after the recipient's address, but this is optional. All right. Now, do we remember when we were writing the letter of complaint when we said that you are required to write the subject? Now, if you want to include the subject in the letter of request, it is fine, right? And I think it would be good, too, so that the person from the get-go, when they open the letter or when they look at the letter, they can see exactly what it is that you are requesting. All right? All right. And here on screen, we have an example of the layout of a letter of request. So this is everything that would be included. So here we have the date, and this person included the date at the very top, right? But I would prefer if you would write the date after the sender's address. All right, so sender's address, receiver's address, salutation, body, closing, and signature. All right, so we're going to be breaking it down and looking at the different parts. All right, start with a salutation. What is a salutation, or what is the other word for salutation? I keep asking. If you said greeting, you are correct. Begin the main text of your letter with a proper, respectful salutation. Remember, you and the person may be friends, but remember you're writing in a formal capacity, so we can't include the friend thing in the letter, right? Always remain businesslike. If you know the person you are writing to, you can use their first name. Example, dear Tim, right? But you know the person, but you're not going to write Wagwan Tim. No, it is formal, right? So using dear Tim, it is still maintaining some level of formality there, right? Otherwise, you should use the person's last name and the proper title. Example, Dr., Mr., Miss, or Mrs. If you do not know the name of the person you are writing to, use a salutation like, dear sir or madam, or to whom it may concern. But we prefer you use dear sir or madam and not to use to whom it may concern. And here we have an example of the salutation, right? And this example, dear Mr. Smith, right? Write an introductory paragraph. In the first paragraph of any letter of request, you will need to introduce yourself and clearly but briefly state the purpose of the letter. Example, I am writing in hopes that you will consider making a contribution to the Boston Citizens Charity Fund. If you have any previous interaction with the recipient of your letter, the opening paragraph is also a good place to remind them of the nature of your association or the contact you've had in the past. All right, so the essence of our letters, if you notice, is that we want it to keep it brief, right? The important information is included, right? And it is short and sweet, short and to the point, right? We don't want to overextend ourselves and be writing information that is not necessary. So we always suggest that you stick to the points, all right? So be brief, be concise, all right? Very good. Now, moving on. For example, I am a student in your Drama 101 class, and this is reminding the person the contact you had with them, right? So that it could possibly jog their memories. I am the president of the Boston Citizens Charity Fund, an organization you've generously donated to for the past 10 years. Or, I contacted you last month about the possibility of a class trip to your amusement park. Now, what do we notice about the introductory paragraph of the letter of request? If you said that the tone is formal, you are very much correct. All right? So, when we hear the word introduction, what comes to mind? Right, you're introducing yourself, you're telling the person some information, a little background information, right? But remember, short and sweet. All right. Establishing a connection is not only helpful to the recipient, but may also promote feelings of affinity with you that might increase the chances of your request being granted. All right. Now, remember, it is a request or a letter of request that we are writing. And it is possible that whatever it is that we're asking for may not be granted. But what are we doing? We're writing in a way that the recipient or the reader is not going to turn us down, right? Or to say no, right? So we are kind of buttering up the person, all right? So remember that our request may not be granted, but based on how you write the letter of request, then your letter or your request may be granted. All right, and here we have an example of the introductory paragraph. All right, write a body paragraph. Now, remember, the introductory paragraph is just the beginning of the letter. The body is where we are expounding, right, on what it is that we're requesting. So we're giving additional information. Your body paragraph or paragraphs should provide additional context and information and more specific details about your request. This is your opportunity to spell out exactly what you are asking for and make your case for why your request should be granted. Be thorough but brief. You should clearly explain what it is you are requesting and why the matter is worthy of consideration. But your reader will not want to read your life story. No, your body paragraph, right? Always remember that short and sweet. That is what we're looking for, right? Get to the point. We don't want to hear anything that is not relevant to what it is that you're asking for. So you're asking for permission to visit the amusement park, right? Don't tell them that, okay, then I went there 10 years ago and it was amazing and I'm wondering if the same rides are there that were there 10 years ago. No, that is not relevant, right? You're asking for permission to gain access to the amusement park. Now, you writing all of these things only going to turn the recipient off and say, okay, then this person chat too much or this person too whatever. So, right? Remember, at the end of the day, you want your request to be granted, so you do all the necessary things to facilitate your request being granted, right? So remember, stick to the point, stick to the important information, right? Don't go off on a tangent. Remain right in the middle here. You know, the little square, remain in the little square. Don't go outside of the square, all right? Be straightforward and specific about what you are requesting. The receiver should be left with no doubt as to what you want. For example, I'm hoping you'll consider repeating your generous contribution this year. Or, I'd like to respectfully request an opportunity to resubmit this paper, right? So, at the end of it, what they're saying here is that the reader or recipient should not be guessing what it is that you want. You want something in particular, ask for that thing, right? So, you're there writing, and up to now the person don't know what it is that you want, right? The poor person don't know, say, is it amusement park you want to go. You're talking about your hobbies, and you like the Harry Potter ride and all of these things, and you weren't scared. What it is that you want. You want to gain access to the amusement park. Please include that, and as I said before, do not go off track. Be courteous and use a tone that is appropriate for your reader. Now, we have been saying over and over and over that the letter of request and all other business letters are formal. Now, if you're writing a business letter or a letter of request, to be specific, how would you construct your letter? Right? Say, for example, you know the person, right? Because remember, as it mentioned earlier, you may know the person to whom you're writing, right? So you're requesting something from this person. How you gonna write? Yo, dog, I want some pencil and some pen, you know. Send on now. Where are you? What are you doing? Remember that it is formal, right? And remember that even though you may know the person may be in a capacity above you. Remember that though you are friends, you have to maintain some level of professionalism. Not even some, a level of professionalism, right? So the language and the tone that you use must be formal. So even though you know the person, you can't talk to the person like you're outside or you're liming. You're in a professional capacity, you write as such. So your tone and your language must be formal. Be factual and keep your emotions in check. If you must discuss your feelings about a matter, state them factually rather than emotionally. Example, I am very disappointed when I saw my grade. Not, I'm so mad about this grade. No, you're not quarreling with the person. Remember, say for example, you got a very low grade on a test and you are asking your lecturer to look at the paper again, right, to see if your grade can be pushed up, right? And you're explaining that you are a little bit, you're disappointed about the grade, right? You're not gonna tell the person or the lecturer, please look it over because I know that you missed something. Bear in mind that the ball is in the lecturer's court or whomever it is that you're writing to, right? And remember, the letter of request is something that can be denied, or the request can be denied, right? It isn't a guarantee that the request is granted. It can be denied. So even if you're disappointed, be careful with how you express your disappointment. That is all they're saying, right? Because remember, as I said before, your hand in a lion's mouth, take time and draw it out, right? So the ball is in the recipient's court, so be very careful with how you speak to them, right? So remember, formal, right? Official document. So language and tone must be formal, right? All right, and here it is. We have the body where it is giving additional information. What that you would include in the body of the letter, right? Getting a little tongue-tied here. All right, write a concluding paragraph. In your concluding paragraph, you should make your recipient aware of any relevant time constraints you face, and also express your gratitude for the consideration of your request. For example, if you are writing to request information or a meeting with someone that must occur before a certain date to be of any use to you, politely make that clear in the conclusion. We're going to take a quick break. More on letter of request when we come back. Welcome back to class time. We are looking at the letter of request. All right, so before we went for our break, we were looking at the concluding paragraph. All right, but before we look at the concluding paragraph, jot down, right, at home, the different parts of the letter that we have looked at, right, of the letter of request that we have looked at already, right? So I'm giving you 2 seconds in which to do that. So the letter of request, we're at the concluding paragraph. What are the parts that we have looked at already of the letter of request? All right? So if you have the sender's address, the date, the recipient's address, the salutation, and if you want to include the subject, that is fine. And if you have the body, which includes the introductory paragraph, you're on the right track. All right, so we're looking at the concluding paragraph. Now, in your concluding paragraph, you should make your recipient aware of any relevant time constraints you face, and also express your gratitude for their consideration of your request. For example, if you are writing to request information or a meeting with someone that must occur before a certain date to be of any use to you, politely make that clear in the conclusion. Now, a letter of request. Remember, it is that we're asking for something, right? So in everything, we should be polite, right? So you're writing the letter, don't the letter braps, so, right? Conclude, right? And remember, continuing on the same vein, formal, right? Official document, formal. So the tone and the language must be formal. Now, it might get a little bit monotonous because I keep saying formal, official, but I say that so that it can stick in your minds, so that you can remember that all business letters are formal. All right. Even if your recipient ultimately does not grant your request, the fact that they have taken the time to read your letter and consider your wishes is worthy of thanks. Now, as I've been saying, remember that you're asking for something, it may not be granted, right? There's nothing written in stone that whatever you ask for may be granted, right? So say, for example, you're asking for the stationery for your department and you ask for, say, 50 pens, 100 pencils, right? It may not be granted, but you may not get the full amount, but you can get half, right? So at least it is granted. It may not be granted in the way that you wanted it to, but at least it is granted, all right? Concluding paragraph, right? And the example is here. Thank you for taking the time to read this letter, and we hope you will consider donating your time or money to our cause. The kids need you, right? But if you're writing for us, don't write the word kids, children, right? All right. Add a closing. Finally, your letter needs an appropriate and polite closing. Good options include respectfully, sincerely, or best regards, followed by your name. If you are sending a physical letter, leave 4 lines of empty space between the closing and your typed name. In this space, sign your name with a pen. If you are enclosing any materials with your letter, this information should come after your closing. Example, enclosures 2. All right, so what have we been looking at? The fact that we're writing a letter, right? Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If you say that you're writing a letter and you have everything except the closing, would you consider it a letter? Think about it. I won't answer, but think about everything that we have learned about letter writing. If you include the sender's address, the date, the receiver's address, the salutation, and the body, and you don't close the letter, think about it. Would it be considered a letter? That is something for you to think about, all right? No. An appropriate closing is good, right? Now, at the end of the day, we want to be respectful, and the aim is that we are polite, right? So it is suggested that you use closings that are appropriate for the business letter, right? And remember that the letter of request is a business letter, right? So the options here, respectfully, sincerely, or best regards, these are some examples of closings that you can use, all right? Now, this is an example of the closing. Here and this person chose to use sincerely, Emma Jones. And remember, if you're actually typing the letter to have it printed to send to the person, you would leave space between the closing and the name so that you can write your signature there. All right? All right. Edit and rewrite the letter. Now, why is it important that we edit and rewrite the letter? But initially, we say rewrite because for me, if I'm writing anything, I always do a draft first, right? So that is where the edit and the rewrite, the editing and you actually rewriting the letter would come in, right? Because I think that when you write it rough first, then you can make your corrections and then you can write it properly, right? Give the letter a close reading to make sure your writing is clear, flows well, and accomplishes the goals you set out to accomplish in part 1. Make any necessary revisions. A good way is to assess your writing. Is to read your letter out loud. This will help you to notice any missing words and generally get a sense of whether the language flows well and strikes the appropriate tone. Now, oftentimes when we write something, we tend to overlook certain things. So it is suggested that in this section, when you are editing, you ask someone to look at it for you, right? And look at it for you, proofread it for you, and then now you would know what it is that you might have missed. All right? So you are the one who is writing it. You are the one who is making the request. You know exactly what it is that you're requesting, and you know the purpose for whatever it is that you're requesting, right? So it is your letter. You know what it is that you want to include, right? So you look it over, right, to ensure that everything is okay, and then now you rewrite it. All right. Proofread and the final draft. Right. And as I mentioned before, you would ask someone to proofread it for you. Because as I said, persons tend to overlook things that they write themselves. Right. So you would ask someone to look at it for you and have them check to see if there's anything that you need to correct, anything that you need to add, and so on. And then you would write it properly. All right. So after you've made any substantive edits, give the letter one more look to catch any spelling and grammar mistakes that you might have missed the first time. It's a good idea to have someone else read your letter for this purpose as well. It is much easier to overlook your own errors, as I said before, all right? So you ask someone to look it over for you, right? So now, in this case, say for example, as I mentioned some time ago, and I always mention that we are teaching you to be able to write any letter at any time or anything at any time. But for paper 2, right, section B, you may get anything in this section, right, under informative discourse, right? So you may get a letter of complaint, a letter of request, an eyewitness report, a newspaper report, whatever it is. Now, in this case, if you're writing your exam, you're sitting your official exam, whether it is a test, your official exam, or whatever it is, remember, you won't have the opportunity to give it to someone to proofread, right? Because remember, if you're in the exam setting for CSEC, right, the exam that you will be doing shortly, if you pass your paper to someone, you'll be in trouble, right? So remember, exam, you will not have anyone to proofread it for you at that time. The onus is on you to know all that you should include. And remember, on the paper, they give you sections where you can make your jottings, right, before you actually write it properly, right? So in that case, you will not have anyone to proofread it for you. So that time, at that time, this part will not refer to you, because you will not have anyone to proofread it for you. It is just you, right? At that time, you should only have tunnel vision, right? Focusing on what is in front of you. So we are preparing you for your exams, right? All right. All right. So before we move on to the tips for writing the letter of request, again, just to ensure that we're on the right track, what are some of the important things that we mentioned about the letter of request? Do we remember? All right, so 1, all right, this is a formal document, right? So we always need to remember that this is a formal document. Anything else that comes to mind after everything that we have looked at so far? It is a formal document. What else? The tone must be formal, right? Do we remember that? Did you, has this resonated with you after everything that we have been looking at? We looked at the application letter, the resume, the letter of complaint, and I've been saying this to you over and over, right? The tone must be formal. What else? As it relates to the letter of request that we have been looking at, what are some of the things that jumped out at you, right? Anything else that we remember? not it, but you should be polite. Right? You should be polite, right? Anything else? Right? Because we're learning as we're going ahead, right? What else? Is anything else that you think that you need to bear in mind, right? Take into consideration the format. All right, and what did we say about the format of the letter, right? Of the business letter, to be specific, right? Most persons tend to use the block format, but we are not saying to you that you must use the block format. You can either use the semi-block or the block format, right? So take into consideration the format, block or semi-block, right? So these are some things that we should remember, right, or take into consideration when we're writing our letters of request. All right, now let us move to the tips, right? Tips for writing a formal letter of request. All right, so we're going over everything. So we're cementing all of what we have learned, right? Because sometimes we tend to forget, right? So the letter should be simple. You should inform your recipient of writing the letter you should inform your recipient the reason for writing in the first paragraph of the letter, right? So whatever it is that you're requesting, include it in the first paragraph. And the first paragraph is also referred to as the introductory paragraph. So if you're requesting stationery, don't just say I'm requesting stationery. What type of stationery is it that you're requesting, right? Pencils, books, pens, erasers, right? Be specific. If you feel that it is appropriate, then write about pertinent information to help them remember you. For instance, if you are writing to a former lecturer or professor, explain to him the class you were in and the year. As for a supervisor, mention when you worked with them. These are small details that will help the reader to recollect how they know you. In the next paragraph, discuss what exactly you want the reader to do, and if there is any deadline involved, share the information. If there is any requirement involved, include it as a supporting documentation as the recipient may need it. Give all the necessary information that they need to comply with your request. All right, now all of these things that we're talking about may seem exhausting, but they are important, right? And I can't reiterate enough the fact that you are making a request and the request may not be granted, but you can use your words to butter the person up, right? Conclude the letter by giving your contact details such as your full name, mailing address, phone number, and your email address in the body of the letter. Ask the reader to contact you if there is any sort of queries or questions or concerns about the request you have asked for. And finally, thank the person for their patience to read the letter. All right, now, sample letter of request. All right, now, what do we notice about this sample? Is everything that we have mentioned earlier on the sample, right? Let us go through. So here it says from. What would we include there, right? From. What should be there, right? From the person who is sending the letter, right? So it is the person's address. And remember, if you're writing on behalf of an entity, right, or an organization, then that is the address that you would use, all right? Then you have your date. And remember, in the first example that I showed you, the address was at the very top, right? But I would prefer if you use or if you placed the date after the sender's address. All right, date, on which letter is written, right? So say, for example, you're writing the letter today. It is today's date that you would include, right? And remember, how do we write the date? Do we write the date the 23rd of the 3rd, 2021? Right? Is that how we write it? No. Right? We would write what? March 23, 2021. Right? All right. 2. What would we include under 2? Right? The name of the person. And remember, right? We write the name of the person, then we write their qualifications or the department in which they work, right? And then we include the address, right? Subject line. So remember, I said to you, it would be good, right? If when you're writing the letter of request, you include the subject. Very good. Here, this sample has it. And I would prefer if you would include the subject line, because the recipient, as they look at the letter, they will know exactly what it is that you are requesting. All right. Then you would have the salutation. And another name for the salutation is the greeting. All right. Beautiful. Then now we have the body. And what is included in the body, right? Everything that we have mentioned so far, right? And then now we have our closing, all right? Now, we're going for our final break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up. Welcome back. Now, before the break, we were looking at the sample letter of request, right? Now, it's good for you to have something to look at so that you will know exactly what it is that you should do. So you have the layout there, and then now, based on everything that we have discussed, then you will know what to go where, right? So when you have the actual sample, you can see it for yourself so that you can know what it is, how everything should be laid out. So here on the sample, we have everything that we have been looking at. So we have the addresses, so who the letter is coming from and who the letter is going to. Then we have the date, we have the subject, we have the salutation or the greeting, we have the body, and then we have the closing. All right, so we are looking at it like this, and we know everything, or we are seeing how everything should be laid out. Now, do you think you can write a letter of request on your own? All right, let us try. So we're working from home, right? So everything that we have looked at so far, we're going to test our skills. And remember, you may not get it perfect the first time, but that is not a problem, right? Because we're learning, right? And everything that we're looking at, you have all the information there. You can go back on YouTube and you can look at everything. You can slow it down, write down the information. So you can have it there and you can practice, right, on your own, right? So remember, we are learning as we go along. All right, so write a letter requesting payment for a job that you completed. Now, if you were in the exam and you saw this question, right, what would come to mind? Would you know right off the bat that you were asked to write a letter of request? How would you know that you're writing a letter of request? Because I did not say write a letter of request. I did not say that. But how would you know that you're writing a letter of request? Let us look at it. So, write a letter requesting payment for a job that you completed. So I did not outrightly say write a letter of request. I said write a letter requesting payment for a job that you completed. So you would deduce that you're being asked to write a letter of request. So you're writing for payment for a job that you completed. At this point, some persons, if I did something, if I worked somewhere and I did not get my pay, I would be very, very disgruntled. Remember what we said about keeping your emotions in check? Yes, you're upset that you have not gotten paid for a job that you already did, and you want your money and you want your money now. Remember, your hand in a lion mouth, you take time and draw it out. So you're going to be as polite as possible, right? Because you want your money, right? And you want your money as soon as possible. But before we get to actually writing the letter or telling the person about the fact that we did not get our money, so what is it that we should start off with? Right? So remember, we're writing a letter. Now, what is the first thing that we should include? Now, for me, if I'm going to be writing the letter, I choose to use the block format. Remember, there's no hard and fast. If you want to use the semi-block format, that is your choice, right? But I like using the block format, all right? Now, what is the first thing that I would have, right? So if you remember your, the sample, right, it said to, right? So to, Mark Mitchell, right? So this is where the letter is going. This is to whom the person is going. So Mark Mitchell, right? And where is this person? All right, say Human Resource Department. Right? Just make up an address, right? And before we get there, Human Resource Department for where, right? Where is the letter? Where is this person working? Human Resource Department, where? All right, Smith and Davis Advertising. So we have the specific company, right? The name of the company here, right? Right? And then what would we include? What else would we have? Right? So the exact address, right? And then we have what? Where is it located? Which parish? Right? Kingston. Right. So to, right? This is what we will include. To, right? So where it is going. Where is it going? To whom is the request or the letter of request going? All right? Then we have from. What would we include in from section? Right? I am the one who is writing the letter of request. So it is coming from me. So what would I put here? Right? So I would put the fact that I would put my name. And don't mind the poor handwriting. Right? So it is coming from me. Right? And where do I work? I might work in the same organization, right? So I can, what department, right? Mailing department, right? Mailing department, same organization, Smith and Davis Advertising, Smith and Davis Advertising. Right, same address, 3 to 4 Mavis Street, Kingston. Right? So, we understand how it is that we outline the addresses for the letter of request, right? We know what it is that we should include, right? So we're starting off here. So remember, as I said, you can take into consideration whatever format it is that you're most comfortable with using, right? So you can either use the semi-block or the block format, right? And I choose to use the block format, but that is just my choice. You can use whatever format it is that you're most comfortable with. Now remember that we are preparing you for your exam. So we have to go step by step with you so that you can understand everything that we have to do. But that's all for today. Class time resumes tomorrow at 9 a.m. with CSEC English. We will be looking at the Eyewitness report. Until then, keep safe.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.